And welcome into the Sporting Lounge. Thank you so much for joining us. As always, grab a beer, kick up your feet, and have a good time. We are joined by the three-time champ, T. Rizzle, Austin, and of course, Derpamation. So,
thank you.
Derpination, according to Austin. So, go give him a follow on Twitch, and then, of course, always join us. We like to do this kind of stuff. Today,
Squirrel broke and stole his camera.
Yeah, so we're going to address why he's not on camera. Squirrels.
It's the one from
Ice Age?
It is the one from Ice Age.
Yep.
He left his note in there.
Jesus.
Yeah. Just actually, my camera's just not working for some reason.
I know, it's all right.
Well, today's going to be an interesting day as some of us are going to try to convince you that sports are rigged, and some of us are going to convince you that they're not, because they're not. There you go. There's my stance already.
All right, Trav, start it off.
There's your stance. One, your camera makes you look like part of your face is getting eaten. But two, there's okay. I don't necessarily fully think that sports are rigged. Like nothing, and for our audience, nothing here we say is like been proven or is fact or anything like that. It's just for conversation and opinions. There's been too many things that have happened. This wouldn't fall on the league, but the league denied it at first. But when Tim Donahue came out and like admitted to gambling and throwing games like betting in the NBA, you can't really deny that one, especially like since that. As much as this hurts me to say because I'm a Lakers and Kobe guy, but that 2002 Western Conference Championship Series against
the Kings, yeah,
that Game 6 was bad, very bad.
Yeah, I want that. I actually have a notepad open right now.
Kobe
literally
threw a blatant elbow in the Mike Bibby's face, and it broke his nose, bleeding everywhere, right in front of the refs. He didn't even bother. He didn't care.
He was like, "Oh boy, that helped my betting line." There's an obvious argument to that, and that's the refs just were off their game. But I mean, I don't know if I've ever seen reffing that bad. Like that might have been the worst reffing since like they probably have better reffing in the 40s in prison than that Lakers Kings game.
Yeah,
and it's wardens versus prisoners, and the refs are still even.
Like longest yard without the estrogen.
Yeah.
Oh man. No, like Michael Wilbon even like broke down like 6 blatant fouls that happened in a 5-minute span in the fourth quarter of that game that weren't called, that were just horrendous.
So Ben,
but
yeah,
I don't know. And then the NFL, like he has a Lions fan, and it has like a subservient Lions fan. Ben, you know that you can look up on YouTube or look up anywhere, and you'll find 20-minute videos of just horrible, blatant disregard calls against the Lions.
But it's easy to look at that stuff after the fact, though.
Right. Now, refs.
Real time.
Now, here's the thing.
My reasoning, my
like
reason
real
for
time
it,
view versus like ref view is way different.
I know, but there's so many easy solutions to
like what
to make every penalty or questionable play reviewable instead of just not.
Then the games will take 10 hours. Baseball literally just went through that issue with the games taking too long. That's a good way to kill a professional sport. But I want to really hone in on this Game 6. Lakers Kings, 2002 Game 6, conference finals. So, Ben, are you familiar with the situation in depth?
Not fully in depth, but I won't need to be.
Okay.
You want to know why? Is it bad officiating? Is it gambling? Because I can chalk that up to bad apples. But tell me.
So, supposedly, there's two sides to it. There's no ifs, ands, buts about it, really, if you want to say the game was poorly called. That's just kind of a fact. So, we'll just get through that. If you're not too familiar on the issue, I can show you highlights, and you'd be like, yeah, that's a poorly called game. That's no ifs, ands, buts about it. So, where things start to get a little bit sticky in this situation, it's a couple years later, Tom Donahue, who is just like probably the most infamous ref in sports history, he went to jail for betting, and he officiated for like 5 seasons, maybe 4 seasons. I'm not sure. But he was an NBA ref, probably the most infamous ref of all time. And he says that the game was fixed and manipulated by 2 refs on the 3-man crew assigned to officiate it. Now, there's 2 sides to this, and both sides, like, you can fight on both ends. So the first side is you can take Tim for his word and say, "Yup, that's proof that it was rigged." Or you could say that Tim's not a trustworthy narrator. We probably shouldn't believe him. It seems like he's just trying to cause some drama. Okay, so that's the first side. And then the other side is you could say, okay, Tim said that. There's no way that it was rigged then, because we don't trust him. And then on the other side as well, you could go ahead and say that, oh, well, Tim was saying that, so it's like double reverse. So it's just it's like an Ouroboros just continuously eating its tail with the amount of like angles you could look at this with. And I think at the very least you have to acknowledge it's an interesting theory because it was such a poorly officiated game. Now, we were talking about this a little bit before the pod. You're talking about organizational failure, which in your terms meant more than likely ownership, coaching, higher ups, staff of the organization, not necessarily the players. And in your opinion, do you think the refs represent the sport that they are coaching or reffing for? Not coaching for, excuse me.
Do they represent the sport? Yeah, I think they
So,
represent
for
the
example,
sport,
an
not
NBA
the organization, though.
Not the
Okay.
teams, but the actual league. They represent the league because that's who they're under contract with.
Do you think that NBA refs represent the NBA?
Yes.
I do too. I think there's an argument to be made about players.
All sports represent the league that they're a part of because that's who signs their paychecks.
It's like they're the warden of the league. It's like they're the guys
even
that
more
actually
people
go down
that have
there
to be paid off.
Funny enough, it's illegal. Not illegal. It's not allowed in the NBA under contract if you're a ref or work for the league. You're not allowed to gamble on anything except like for no reason whatsoever. It doesn't matter where you are. It doesn't have like a bunch of fine print like the NFL does. But you're allowed to gamble on horse races for just random. I think that's kind of funny.
Wait, hold on. So you can gamble on horse races, but nothing else.
Yep.
Okay. So that's okay. Tangent. Real quick. Like ADA, like Americans with Disabilities Act or whatever. You can have dogs and ponies or small miniature horses classify as disability animals.
Mm-hmm.
That made me think of that. Okay. Anyways, back to the topic at hand.
Okay, so I thought that policy was enforced. So on a side tangent, I want to continue on this side tangent, and then we'll go back to the Game 6 and conference finals, Lakers Kings 2002. I thought that rule was like associated into the rule book, like probably in the 60s or something, because horse racing was big back then. And no, this rule was enforced in 2019.
Mm-hmm.
According to the NBA's 2019 updates to mandate rule focused on gambling. Yeah, Travis is right. Travis is right. Hilarious. So it's not like some old timey shit. It's just like, so maybe that is a conspiracy theory that's going to happen in like a decade. Like if horse 8 wins, the Lakers are going to the finals.
Some random connect dots through sports intertwined.
Yeah. So Ben, in your opinion, do you think the NBA referees represent the organization that they are a part of?
Somewhat.
Yes or no?
Then I'd go no.
Okay, why is that?
Because refs are their own things that every level of every sports has, so I would consider refs their own entity.
Okay, So that's a great point. Let me go ahead and run this past you. So there's a Pee Wee ref that keeps on tripping these kids, and you go to the ref and you say, "Yo, bro, what the fuck? Stop tripping my kid!" Like it's every play. You just walk up to him and trip him while he's running around, and he says, "Sorry, bro." Who's he gonna tell you to take that up with? The league that it's a part of. So you go to the Pee Wee League, and you go to them, and they say, "Oh, our guy did that? Well, he's not our guy. He's his own person. He's just tripping kids. Like, we just pay him. He just wears our emblem on his uniform." Okay, and let's take this a step fucking farther. Like
Pee Wee League.
Let's take this a step fucking farther.
Wear the emblem on their uniform. They just wear basic as.
I know, but let's take this a step fucking further. You go to McDonald's, okay?
And Grimace is there.
And Ben's there fucking with your fries, and he's in a McDonald's uniform, and you're like, "Hey, bro, can you not be manhandling my fries and squishing them, putting them in these containers? Please, dude, I paid like $3 for those fries." And he's just like, "Nope, deal with it." And you're just like, "Let me talk to the fucking manager." Do you expect those employees to be representing the business that they are a part of? Yes or no?
In a fast food service thing, yes. As refs,
Okay.
they report to their head refs, who then have meetings with the NFL, NBA, hockey,
So they are
whatever
employed
organization.
I would say at the end of the day, the league that they're reffing in, it signs their paychecks, and when they get in trouble or fined, that they're issued leagues and suspended by the league, or issued fines and suspended by the league, not
recommendations, promotions, whatever.
I don't know. One would argue that they're independent contractors.
Yeah, exactly. Like they'd have to file a, what is it, like a 1036 or whatever for taxes. So I'm just saying, like, I don't fully believe refs, are of the league. Whereas, like, the head coaches and the upper management of the NBA, the David Stern, all of those people would be the people accountable, the GMs, the head coaches, the players. And I think, by the way, there's not enough money to pay off a whole history of Hall of Fame careers and non-Hall of Fame careers. Because remember, those people who sit at the end of the bench, if they know the game is scripted, why wouldn't they blow the whistle? Why wouldn't they say? Because they know they're not getting money from the league enough to pay forever. So go make your story. Go make your bag. But we haven't seen that reliably. So it's just not.
The NFL does use NDAs, right?
Yeah, and you don't think someone who was an 8th string fucking tight end who made $100K wouldn't mind saying, "Okay, I'll get sued, but my story's getting out."
Are oftentimes squashed in court.
Yeah, as in not worth it. So
well, like, Ben, let me run this.
I'm not trying to say that the sports themselves are like rigged to a T, like predetermined outcomes, and for every game.
If we knew at the beginning of the season Eagles and Chiefs were making it to the playoffs or making it to the Super Bowl, do you think Miami would have made the trades they made? Do you think every other team would have tried to compete the way they competed if they already knew Eagles and Chiefs were going to the Super Bowl? Why would you even try? Why wouldn't you just rest your starters? Why not see the unproven people? Like, there'd be no reason.
I
there is a reason.
I think there's a very smart business going on. And what's going on and the reason I say this because, and I think that we can say this until refs are reprimanded for bad officiating, and so they start having to pay fines or be getting in trouble for horrible calls that determine outcomes of games. I do think that it's good marketing. Like refs do influence the business aspect of the games. Like, as in, like, let's take the Lions, for instance, with how bad they are. Okay, well, they're a bad team. They're a small market team for the NFL, at least for a little bit, because of how bad they were. So they didn't get a lot of publicity. They weren't bringing in money compared to a lot of other teams in the league. So here, have controversial plays with them all the time. That gets them publicity and looks and talked about. That's how you make more money and revenue off those kinds of teams that bring it in naturally. And here's that stuff happens on purpose.
Here's something else too. You got to think of jersey sales. You got to think of players like Tom Brady going to the Bucs. Like money. A lot of money. those stadiums pack a lot of people. And for reference, here, let me see if I can bring up the stat line.
That's why there's no
Why?
salary
Why?
cap
Wait,
in
hold on.
baseball.
Before
That's
we
why there's
bounce
no
off
salary
that,
cap in baseball.
why does it matter if a player switched teams? You just said Tom Brady to the Bucks. What does that have to do with being rigged?
Because
That brings
Because-
a big market to Tampa.
yes,
Okay,
it brings
big
a lot of
market in
money.
Tampa.
You were so
And they had
okay,
a
Ben,
great team.
stop. Ben, stop. Here's the thing. You asked a question. You said, why would anybody go out and get these players if they knew it was going to be rigged? So Tom Brady to Tampa, he ended up going, but Tyreek Hill to Miami. You know, that's another player where it's like, people will pay tickets. People are Tyreek Hill fans. They will pay to go see Tyreek Hill live. A lot of people will. You know, the same thing, you know, when Mike Vick came back. Like, a big reason the Eagles probably were willing to sign Mike Vick was because he was so talented and he was so electric. Because they knew how much money he was going to reel in, on top of his talent and his potential. And the more playoff games you get, the better your record is. If I go 15-2 and I get the first seed in the AFC, where are those next 3 playoff games going to be played, Ben?
Home.
Home. And what team is going to make those fucking dollars?
Home team.
So that's where the rigging could get put into place too, because they could be like,
Okay, so would every team then try to rig so they could be the number 1 seed and have those 3 extra playoff games? Wouldn't every
but
team?
their team's not good enough. But that's
Okay.
why you sign players. That's why you do that, because the players aren't aware of it.
So
What the
exactly,
theory-
you
what
just
the
proved
theory-
my point.
What the theory is they go up to the organizational level, as you want to refer to it as, which is just ownership. They'll have a meeting. This is how the rigging in the NFL theory goes. I don't believe it's true. I think there's a couple games in the past 30 years where this might be applicable, but I don't think that it happens very often, and I think it's less than 1% of the games. But an owner will come to another owner and say, listen, here's the deal. You let us win this game, I'll write you a check for this much. There's enough money in those NFL owners' pockets where they can make it so the other team just can't say no. And that's the theory. So there is a theory out there that does make sense. And your question about why would players go to specific organizations is because they don't know who's going to win. They don't know what play calling is going to happen. They don't know why this is happening. They don't know why this player is injured. They don't know why this is happening. They don't know why this player is suspended. They don't know. Every player has dirt that can be dug up on them too. You know, look at
So you're
look at
saying
Calvin
these
Ridley.
ownerships are then going to the organization of the refs themselves and saying, hey, throw this game in our favor for X, Y, and Z dollars. That does not mean the sport is rigged. That means you have a couple bad apples. Hence my thing of it's not rigged. There are a couple bad people. I mean, horse fixing races has been a thing for centuries. So we know people are going to try to fix games. We know players have, bet against themselves to win a bigger bag, like the Black Sox scandal or whatever you were saying. That's what I'm talking about. You'll have the bad
Yeah,
apples
I'm
of
just
people
talking
trying
about
to
something
fix
random.
games. But at no point will I ever think a league is fully rigged, because you're not going to convince a whole team from hell. You're not going to convince the owners. Hey, the Kansas City Chiefs and Eagles are both going to win their number 1 seed. They get all the home games. You're not going to have teams like Miami, Chargers, 49ers, whoever, the strong dogs going, no, because they're going to want the number 1 spot. They're going to be like, well, no, I have billions of dollars too. I want to buy that AFC chain. So it's just never going to happen.
But see, you're taking my point so obtusely that it's really aggravating, because it's like I literally say, prefacing, this happens probably less than 1% of the time in any game, and probably 0.01%.
So then you
of the
agree,
time.
sports aren't rigged.
They aren't
If
usually
you-
rigged.
Yeah,
They
so
aren't usually rigged. But I do acknowledge that there have been situations where they are rigged. And I'm saying
I think it's just
0.01%.
play ball, except for when it's needed for dollar signs.
I think on average, probably 2 or 3 games out of every major sport, MLB, NHL, NBA, and NFL. I think out of all 4 of them, I think about 2 to 4 games probably a year are rigged. That's what I think.
So first off, is there no such thing as coincidences? Who agrees with that?
No, I think coincidences happen all the time. I work in an oil shop. It literally happens all the time. Why is this light on? I don't know. Your battery's dying. Well, you guys were the last ones to touch it. I don't do batteries.
That's just lack of common sense. But
Coincidence that it happened to turn on. So continue.
9/11 happens. All of a sudden, Patriots dynasty is born. Hurricane Katrina happens. Boom! Oh my God, the Saints are relevant.
What the fuck does the Patriots dynasty have to do with 9/11?
Because their color is red, white, and blue.
Patriotic.
Patriots, patriotic. Like,
America.
You should have put that together.
And then literally Hurricane Katrina happens and the Saints win the Super Bowl.
I mean, it was a couple of years later, but yeah, and they beat my Saints. All right, they beat my Colts. And the Saints had a great team, though. Yeah, they played the Colts. They beat my Colts. And they had a great QB, Drew Brees. And they had a scandal.
Think about all the scandals in the NFL that were out there having legal battles back and forth over the last 20 years.
There's talks of the Bulls moving out of Chicago. And if the Bulls left, there's a good chance Chicago wouldn't be a sports city at this point in time.
Well, like,
drafts
going back to Hurricane Katrina, that happened in like 2004. Saints didn't win until 2010.
It was 2005, but also you got to think that
4 years later.
Yeah, that's when they're finally able to go back to their arena because they're still cleaning up the city.
They were back like the following year.
It was 2 years.
It was 2 years.
Yeah.
And they were playing out of College Stadium for a bit too.
Yeah.
So I can always agree that there are bad apples and there are people trying to fix it. I just don't think as a whole, overall, it's rigged. So like maybe 1 to maybe 2% across all sport venues are rigged. I just don't think you can have enough highly competitive people to accept rigged. Like, I just don't.
Here's a wild theory. Here's a wild theory. This isn't anything I've heard. It's something I thought of off the top of my head. Would you think it's plausible that Vegas has formants or planted people in the referee rings in certain leagues?
Oh, yes. Because that involves money. For sure.
That's Sin City, baby. Are you fucking kidding me? Fuck yeah.
Yeah, see, that's not rigged. That's Vegas trying to fix it for the house trying to win. In my eyes, that's different. That's
what happens in Vegas. You know what I mean, bro? Like, that ain't fair. But he's got a point.
The only reason I would just okay. The NFL, I'm more convinced of being rigged than any of the other leagues in general.
Explain.
Yeah, you have to explain.
Well, just all the conspiracies, all the crazy like tuck rule game, everything going on with all that stuff. The Lions being all that stuff. Everything I brought up earlier, but the
Saints don't matter. That's out the window. That doesn't count.
Be quiet. You're scared that your Patriots suck. But
Patriots hardly count.
Also, let me interject real quick, Travis. Travis isn't saying that he believes these conspiracy theories are just 100% true. They were great teams. They were great. We're just talking about the potential of these conspiracies. I want to reassess that. No, not you, for the fans, because we're talking about touchy subjects like 9/11 and Hurricane Katrina. This isn't us mingling with events that are serious. We're just talking about fun sports stuff.
This is
just a reminder.
I agree with this stuff. This is just all the stuff that's been like I've seen people talk about in this regards. I
just wanted to put that reminder out there.
Yeah,
I got you. My bad, Shane.
The reason I think that there is some level of knowing from the league itself is the fact that there's until they do something like install some sort of punishment or change something to help with the refereeing and just let it go, and players aren't allowed to talk about the refs without getting fined until that changes. That's a little sus to me personally.
But and then talk up the refereeing to human nature.
Yeah, and then the other part is I really want to know what were in those emails that so hush they force screwed it out of the NFL.
Yep.
That is telling to me.
Because, I mean, that Bucs team was a great Bucs team. But I mean, that Raiders team was a really fucking good Raiders team. Like, no offense to that Bucs team, but like, they were what, 14-point underdogs going into the game, and it was a Super Bowl. Like, it might have been the biggest swing in a Super Bowl in history, at least up to that time. There is no way. Like, it seems so convenient that they randomly find these emails, 20 years after they're sent, and you trace back the timeline to when they would have been sent,
not
and it's
just find what he said, but just like
no, not at all.
But the circumstances of what actually happened, like, all right, dude, that's obviously a fall guy. You guys are trying to keep the bigger picture hidden. That's
And there's something obvious too. Like, at that time, even though it's not politically correct, terminology that he was using is not okay to utilize ever. But at the time, it wasn't frowned upon the same way that it is currently. We're talking about something 20 years ago. We're talking about a time when modern warfare lobbies were just standard things, you know, like we're talking about big old bombs dropping every 10 seconds, man. And I'm not talking about actual bombs. You know, it's one of those
bad stuff.
It's one of those things where, like, at the time, those emails, why would you blacklist a coach who's so legendary to the sport? Because Gruden, like, let's be honest, is a legendary coach. Upper echelon, top 10 all time. You know, just when you're thinking of top coaches of all time, you put Gruden up there.
I don't know about top 10.
Okay, top 10. Here we go. Lombardi, Noel, Ditka, you can put Donny Dungy. Mike Tomlin probably has something up there. Bill Belichick. I put those two together because they're active. Belichick's above Tomlin at this current point. Belichick's probably number one. I always hesitate to put him on because he's active. That's the only reason. You know, and then like now we're talking about spots where Josh Gruden could be put in, like 7, 8, 9,
right.
10. Like we're talking about.
Can I read you a list real quick of the top 10 that I found? And I want to know who you'd put above him.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so I'm gonna start at 1. Bill Belichick, Vince Lombardi, Don Shula, George Hollis, Bill Walsh, Chuck Noll, Paul Brown, Tom Landry, Curly Lambeau, Joe Gibbs.
I put Gruden above at least 3 of those coaches.
Yeah.
Which 3? I'm curious.
Curly, probably Brown. Honest, I don't know. Brown is tough because it's like Brown was dominant, but also his players were just like obscenely talented too. And like he also did like culturally. I couldn't put Gruden above Brown because of what Brown did for the culture. But if we're talking about play design, Shula, like honestly, like hot take, I think Shula is below Gruden. I think he's still top 10, but I think Gruden's above him.
Shula's got the most wins all time.
Okay.
All right, so all time, where would you put Gruden?
I put him 7 or 8.
7 or 8, okay.
I think Shula is like 8 or 9. That the thing is with Shula is like he got 1 ring, the perfect season.
I believe so, yeah.
And that was it. And he wasn't. I just want to double check my facts before I start speaking up my ass.
He had 2. And
he had 2.
NFL, and 1 championship before the merger.
Yep. Got Coach of the Year 4 times over his about 32-year coaching career. Pretty solid. Not really, but pretty good. Like he's a great coach. He's a Hall of Famer. No ifs, ands, buts about it. One of the greatest coaches of all time. Mm-hmm. But you know, let's just rewind for a second. There's a conversation to be had about Gruden being a top 10 coach. We can agree on that. We can have that conversation. Let's just reel it back. You know, I'm not as high on Shula. You know, Shula coached in an era where I wasn't alive, and I don't think his teams made a big enough legacy for me to recognize them as efficiently as I probably should. Shula's probably a better coach than I'm giving him credit for. I'm probably being ignorant. I understand that. I just, you know, a lot of times when you're looking at like 90s, 60s, 70s, 80s, you know, Dolphins, it's a lot of simple schematics. It's not like a large developing game. It's just a very standard, He's the most winningest head coach of all time, but he also coached for like 32 years. So, that's kind of where I'm at with it. He's a great coach, top 10, but we can put John Gruden in that conversation as well. And the thing is,
Maybe.
how the fuck do you maybe, exactly. But he's a great coach. We could say great coach, period. Whatever.
Yeah.
He's 117 and 112. I mean,
he also coached some of the worst teams and turned them around. You want to talk about a coach that turned around cultures? He did that not once, not twice, 3 fucking times. And he did it effectively and efficiently. Yeah, he has losing seasons under his belt. But the thing is, you look at those teams when he got there versus the teams when he left, half the players were the fucking same, but they went from nobodies and draft busts to Pro Bowl perennials. That's what I want out of a head coach. That type of elite talent making. That's what you look for in a head coach. And when we're talking about coaching talent, it's someone like Gruden that you had to have high in that conversation, which makes that email scandal so much more sketchy. Speaking of sketchy organizational things, we talked about it a little bit before the pod. The 2005 Penguins draft.
I was about to reel it back in before you did, Shane, but thank you.
Yeah, I was gonna. No,
I was like, we're getting a little too deep into.
I was gonna talk about that too, like really good timing for certain cities to get the number 1 draft pick and lottery picks for the NHL and in the NBA. Like, right. We just sit like 2005 Penguins, and then lots of talk of this year for the Blackhawks. Oh, you just finally lost 2 generational talents in Jonathan Toews and Patrick Kane, and then you had like the 8th best odds to get the number 1 pick, and you just get it and land the next generational talent to keep it going. It's a big market city and one of the original 6 teams. So,
Shane, please explain the Penguins one.
All right,
that one's even worse.
So, the year is 2005. The year is 2005. Pittsburgh Penguins are one of the bigger teams in the NHL. Pittsburgh is a pretty big market when it comes to hockey.
Yes.
I don't want to misquote, but at the time they were at least a top 10 market. They're a significantly large market. And it's one of those situations where the Penguins slid into the lottery, and there's quotes coming out saying the 2005 entry draft was one of the shadiest things to ever go down in the NHL. That was the first time.
Correct?
Yep. That was the first time since 1980 the NHL lottery draft was held behind closed doors. So, already kind of sketchy because they normally have like the envelope and everything's all big and it's just like this massive thing, just spectacular. And so we're talking about for the first time in 25 years. It's televised. There was no public drawing of the balls. Gary Bettman went behind the curtain, and he came out from behind the curtain holding a Pittsburgh Penguins logo. Oh, look, Penguins, congratulations, you won. And for reference, this is what the walk on stage looked like. I'm reading an article about it while we're talking about it, so I get the quotes correct. So here's the video on the article.
Oh, that's when they got.
This is literally the same thing.
Yeah, what's crazy about that is the Penguins were on the verge of bankruptcy.
Yeah, they were talking about moving to Hamilton.
And then they get a top 10 player all time.
Yeah, like as I was saying earlier, you know, it was one of those situations where it's like things lined up a little too perfectly. You randomly hold this draft, and Sidney Crosby was the best player, best prospect in the last 50 years. And that's no essays buts about it. You know, Travis and I were talking a little bit about it beforehand. Wayne Gretzky, obviously. You know, Mario, like, also just obviously thousands of people would go to his practices and shit. But, you know, like, you can make an argument that Crosby was a bigger prospect than both of them. Because this is at a time when, you know, comparatively to back in the 70s, when the NHL was still building, it was popular, but it wasn't as popular as it currently is. And they're trying to build traction. They had these great players, and those great players ended up building the NHL to heights that they could have never imagined at the time when they were drafted. Crosby was the beneficiary of the NHL being at such a high level. So the thing is with Crosby, you could say that his prospect profile was larger via media, via prospect, via just everybody knew who Sidney Crosby was in 2005. And it was a big deal. He was a big prospect. We're talking about, like, I don't even fucking know, like a Trevor Lawrence, a Peyton Manning type prospect when we're talking football.
Yeah.
Just huge superstar coming in. And he comes in, dominates, wins a couple Stanleys, and calls it a day. And the thing is, do we think that was rigged? Honestly, I think that there's a very good chance it was, even though I'm a big Pittsburgh guy.
Yeah.
Big
I think
Pittsburgh
there was.
guy. Oh my god, I'm surprised you haven't talked about the Steelers yet.
Hey, I don't need to talk about the Steelers in this video.
I'll say you can argue it happened, you can argue it happened just this year in the NBA because the San Antonio Spurs were not the favorites to get the number 1 pick, and they end up getting the number 1 pick right in time for the next generation because San Antonio was garbage, and now they get Victor, and then sign Pop to another 4 years.
I think
it was. So
I think there's something to be said, but I don't think it's as realistic. The thing is, with the Penguins draft, it was behind a closed curtain. They literally walk off stage like it's the NFL draft. Like Roger Goodell walking back on stage, and he's like, the pick is in. The Penguins have the first pick overall.
yeah, that would that is a little sus. I think everyone would agree that the leagues are not 100% clean throughout their history. With as far
I
in
think
regards
bad
to
decisions are
attempting to be
made, but
rigged.
I wouldn't say necessarily rigged.
What do you guys define as rigged?
Blatantly, like 100% rigged, I would say like every outcome, every game is predetermined. Like the season's outcome is predetermined. For as far as like the games and like win losses and everything, like individual players' stats can, pop off says do what you got to do in the game. But I don't think that's happening.
No, I don't think it's like that.
I mean, because if you go back to the Penguins, right, they were because it gets a little weird because they changed the rules with that draft because of the previous year was the lockout. So the rules for the lottery get a little funky, so they have to go based off of the previous year, 2003 or whatever it was.
Well, think back to just
03,
2017 when the NHL expanded to Vegas and had the Knights, and then all of a sudden they're the most successful expansion team in all of major sport history. They've literally been in the league. They've been a team for 6 years, and they've went to 2 Stanley Cups, made the conference finals all 6 years, or 4 out of the 6 years.
See,
Dominant.
Stanley Cup now.
I don't know. Something's said about the player's heart and determination and everything like that, though, too.
Well, the kind of players they were able to grab in an expansion draft is unheard of. So, like
because if the Golden Knights don't do as well,
on paper,
like do the Raiders go
the
there?
best team when after this expansion draft, but they had a good.
I think
team.
the Raiders probably would still go there. To answer your question, Shane.
I could see it. So my definition of rigged, I had the dictionary definition, which I'll read in just a second. But my definition of rigged
Yes, ma'am.
is okay, cunt. So
Mr. Quiet.
I think rigged just means the game is somehow manipulated into one side's favor. Not necessarily like, oh, it's just completely rigged means like, oh, it was 100% going to happen. I think just a rigged game means that, the refs are going to make a little bit more chippy calls on one side, something like that. The official dictionary term is rigged, an adjective, manipulated or controlled by deceptive or dishonest means.
Mm-hmm.
So, like, the term rigged doesn't necessarily mean, oh, yeah, the refs went out there and guaranteed and they paid each other off and da-da-da-da-da. No. Like, rigged just means...
So the actual dictionary definition is that the circumstances we're talking about would 100% yes by definition be rigged.
Yes. Like, the only question for the circumstances we're talking about is, do we believe it was manipulated?
I mean, and then the NFL does have an entertainment license,
Yeah, they do.
so it's not.
They also do make like 5 different video games.
Yeah, that is true. That is very true.
All right, so
It's touchy. I don't think anything is 100% predetermined, but I think the right pieces are in the right spots for it to ultimately make the league the right amount of dollar signs for them to keep the ball rolling year in and year out.
all right, so basically, for like the NHL draft, right, for the expansion draft, you can protect 7 forwards, 3 defensemen, and 1 goaltender, or 8 position players and 1 goalie. So
Yeah. So how the hell did they end up with like 8 top 3 at their position players?
So all players who have completed an entry-level contract are eligible to be drafted.
I mean, I want to say top 3, but they didn't really get anyone besides Pittsburgh's old goaltender, Marc-Andre Fleury. That was like legit. But they got a couple. Most of their team was above average, though.
Yeah, they had a good squad.
They didn't necessarily have anyone that was elite on that team, but they had a lot of. In Madden terms, they didn't have any 90 or above overall players, but everyone on that team was like
82 across. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean,
It was a good squad.
Yeah.
So, on the next one, there's 2 more I really want to talk about.
Yes. What bullshit do you have now? Just kidding.
No, it's okay. It's okay. It is bullshit.
I'm just talking. Shit.
The only shit I see is that Spartans shirt.
The Phantom Punch.
Yes.
Oh yeah.
We were talking about this a little bit before. I think that there is a world where Ali does get that knockout,
Please
but
explain
it just.
for those that don't know.
All right. So should I flip up the video or no?
Yes.
Here, I got it right here. I already got it ready. Boom. Entire screen. Boom. Right here. All right. So this is the Ali Phantom Punch. Okay.
Wow.
So the show it in slow motion. He does make contact, but
The little jab was like, there's no way.
dude, the more you watch it, the more you're like, wait, that doesn't make sense.
Like, I understand, like, you know, like if you hit the button, you hit the button, but there's just no way that little right hook jab right here that he gets
Over his arm, it rocks him, but it shouldn't knock him out. And it almost, you know what it looks like almost in slow motion? It looks like he recognizes he gets hit right here. Because you see how his shoulders lock up before he folds?
Mm-hmm.
Most of the time when someone gets knocked out, their knees lock and they wobble out. He doesn't wobble. It's almost like he locks in right there. See how he's like, he juds up almost like he's not out, but then he goes out. So that's why the Phantom Punch is such a big deal, because it's like, okay, does he come in? Like, is he actually out? And you got to remember, this is a big fight in history. So this was their second bout against Sonny Lawson, and this is their second bout. This is the WBA, WBC heavyweight unifier fight. It's a huge fight. Sonny's coming back after a judge decision, and a week after that judge decision fight, after Ali already took 1 title from him, Ali changes his name to Muhammad Ali. So now it's a big fucking fight. And Ali and Sonny's next fight is the Phantom Punch fight. And Sonny gets knocked out. So it's like, is this enough contact to knock out a heavyweight champion in his prime?
Yes.
There's no way.
I just wish I could see the from the other angle. I wish there was a camera angle from the other angle.
Yeah.
Just back then there wasn't. But like on one hand, just like from what I can see, like on one hand, I want to say
it does rock him.
I mean, it gets him pretty good, but I don't think it's enough to necessarily just down him in one punch like that. But at the same time, I mean, these people aren't heavyweights, but like the punch that Conor McGregor landed to knock out Jose Aldo, like wasn't very powerful either, and it just hit him in the right spot.
So I want you to recognize this, okay? These are heavyweight fighters. This is Tyson highlights. So I want you to watch this. So he's 1, 2, 3. It took 3 punches to get him knocked out, and they're full contact. Okay?
He was out before
this is
the third.
that dude, I love watching people get knocked out by Tyson.
It took his brain a whole second that
guy
you have
was
been
like,
walloped.
I got hose in different area codes.
I don't know why I brought up Mike Tyson highlights, bro. Like, I should have known. Fucking Ali highlights. These are probably gonna be better because he's gonna be ducking and weaving and shit. I don't know. So see, the thing is, Ali could hit the button, sure, but see, he's not out. Like, he tagged him a couple times across the face, sure. And honestly, like, I'm 50-50 on this. I've gone back and forth over the years. Ali was one of the greatest boxers of all time. Nothing's needed to dispute that. Just that's a fact. But the thing is, Ali wasn't a power striker, and there's no other point in his career where he landed it on the button like that. Now, it could be possible he had that once in a lifetime just button press, and that was that, and that's all she wrote. But, I mean, we're talking about a heavyweight fighter who's built on agility, okay? Like, his weakest spot was his power striking. He was a lot like Floyd Mayweather, if you want to make a comparison today, where he's ducking and weaving, he's letting them miss all their punches, and then he's getting points on the back end. And he was able to knock people out through kidney shots and consecutive combos. That's what he was really good at. But Ali wasn't going to be the type of guy like Tyson, where he just hits the button and ding, 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 money, lottery spin, and Buffalo. No, that just wasn't how Ali was, unfortunately. Ali's one of the greatest of all time.
To Listen's credit, it was his second time being knocked down ever.
Exactly. Knocked down ever.
So that's a lot of reason why people call it rigged too as well.
Yeah.
And he collapsed slowly.
Yeah.
Kind of thing. So so back in that time, right, we had like a lot of things with the Vietnam War. Back then, like the mafia was a big part of boxing.
Yeah.
Right, so one of the theories is that Listen was kind of afraid of the mafia, which for good reason I could understand. And then the other piece was the Muslim piece, that he was afraid of that aspect of it come from like Muhammad Ali's side of things.
So Sonny goes to the mafia, says, "Hey, I'm willing to throw this fight if you guys get me a bag, because you guys know who's going to win the fight."
A bad apple. Yeah, exactly.
I mean, but at what point? Okay, Ben. Like, I hate to bring politics into this, but if we're going to talk about bad apples,
All right,
are you?
so can I read this quote real quick from Listen to kind of back
Go
up
ahead.
the conspiracy theory? All right, so this is from Listen. He says, "It was a sneaky punch, a right hand I only saw partly. I didn't want to jump right up. The referee never started the count. I didn't know when to get up."
Exactly. The ref didn't start the count. Remember, I said that in the pre-pod too.
Yeah.
I was talking about.
Reiterating.
Yep. So I forgot to mention that the ref didn't start the count either. So he just sat there and he's like, okay. So like, there's like multiple theories on why it happened, how it happened, how we got to this conclusion. I think the Phantom punch is less the punch being Phantom and more Phantoms of the Opera being in the room.
I think it's not necessarily the punch, but the fight as a whole. Because Listen goes on to say that he was down but not hurt.
Yeah.
Because I've never boxed, so I don't know how big the count is.
It's 10.
So that's something you're gonna have to know. Like, I don't know how much of a factor that plays. Like, does that play a big factor?
Huge, dude. Yeah, massive. Because put it like this: you get knocked down, you're laying on the mat, and the ref is supposed to immediately start on 0. As soon as your body lands on the mat, as soon as you go flat, quote unquote, that's a term that they use. As soon as you go flat or prone, whatever the fuck you want to call it, the ref starts the count unless you are completely knocked out and your corner throws in the towel. That is how it will go. So if you're out, and your corner's like, we're worried about his safety, even if he does get up, we're throwing in the towel. And you'll see them, like if you watch some fights, you'll see them throw in a white towel from their corner. That's what that means. They're surrendering. They're saying it's done. It's over. Mm-hmm. So those are the only times that the ref shouldn't count. Is if one, it's obvious that like under no shadow of a doubt, this fighter needs to be done. 2, the corner throws in the towel. Those are the only 2 examples. Why it's so important, the ref is supposed to start the 0 count, so they're supposed to throw their hand up, and you'll see the ref throw up their hand in a knuckle and hold it up, and then they'll go 1, 2, and the second that count starts, that's when a fighter will start sitting up, because it's a good tactic in boxing to catch your breath while you're on the ground. Because as soon as you get back up, then the fight resumes. So you want to wait until about 5 to 7 seconds before you're fully back up. Okay. You want to give yourself a couple seconds to get back on your feet and get back around. But that count starting immediately is a big deal. And if you have a ref sitting there going 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, that's a big deal too.
Well, there's another fight that was huge in that too, and it was actually a Mike Tyson fight. It was Mike Tyson against Buster Douglas, and that was Douglas won. On
that, I just want to say one more thing. I think it's a bigger. I think it's more likely that Liston fixed the fight himself than boxing as a whole, than the organization.
That's probably good. That's a fair statement.
Because I mean, he was under the mafia. The mafia controlled his boxing contract.
Yep.
So I think he probably just laid down just to get paid and not get killed.
If there's a sport that actually there's probably a lot of it's boxing,
especially in the early days.
But another fight was.
70s, yeah.
I would say Mike Tyson, Buster 60s, Douglas.
Right, early days.
It was Mike Tyson's first defeat. Buster Douglas technically, what happened on record is Buster Douglas knocked him out in the 10th round and beat Mike Tyson. That was Tyson's first loss, took away his aura of invincibility. But earlier in that fight, Tyson knocked Buster Douglas out. It's been recorded on stopwatch many times. Yeah. It's like a 15 count, and they didn't start. The dudes didn't count. And it allowed Douglas to get back up and end up winning the fight later on, but Tyson won that fight.
See, that's where the bad apple comes from.
But Ben, how many bad apples before you say? So, do you acknowledge that those situations are rigged? Yes or no?
There are fixed situations. People will always try to fix something to make more money. Yes.
Okay.
Yes, because money. Also, should I offer $75 for Jamar Chase?
Yes.
I just missed it. Now we're on Bijan Robinson. I'm doing a mock draft live. Salary cap. Fantasy, sorry. But yes, it involves money. There are definitely times where it's fixed, where people try to fix it, whether it's the mob, whether it's Vegas, whether it's just an owner who's greedy. Yeah, they're going to try.
So, on to the next one. I know we picked a topic that I'm a huge fan of.
Yeah, what was this other one you want to talk about, my guy?
So I do want to wrap it up with the Black Sox because I think it's the most infamous scandal. Everybody talks about it. If we talk about scandals and we don't talk about the Black Sox, then we can't even call it a scandal video. Okay, so we'll wrap up with the Black Sox.
Bullshit, you gotta say.
Super Bowl 2013 Super Bowl. San Francisco 49ers versus Baltimore Ravens.
You just said Black Sox scandal.
That's the one I want to talk about after this. I want to get this one out. The Black Sox shouldn't take long.
Okay, you're wrong about that one, but that's fine. Okay, anyways, continue.
So, Ravens end up winning the Super Bowl 34-31, but there's the power outage at halftime. And San Francisco
is trailing 37. Sorry.
Okay.
The Harbaugh Bowl.
Yeah, the Harbaugh Bowl. Exactly. So you got to recognize what's happening in this situation. The 49ers are trailing bad, 21-6 at halftime. Goes to halftime, there's a power outage. And San Francisco then goes and makes the final score 34-31, and definitely could have won that game. And a lot of people, without saying it, will insinuate it that that's the reason Colin Kaepernick doesn't have a job, is because that Super Bowl was so fixed after that power outage that there's no reason that the 49ers shouldn't have won that Super Bowl. That's a big reason that, sports fans will actually bring up is, the 49ers should have won it.
Retired.
Yeah. But that game was so rigged in the second half. Do you guys remember watching that live? We would have been old enough to.
Ray Willis fumbling the ball.
Yeah,
Ray
we
Willis
watched it.
fumbling the
We
ball.
watched it at a buddy of ours' house, Ben. I remember watching it with you.
Yep. I remember
Randy
it.
Moss was on that 49ers team. Ray Lewis and Ed Reed were on the Ravens.
Ray
And,
Rice fumbling the ball in the second half.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
It was one of those.
Too.
I don't know, man. Like,
On the
so,
other hand,
things
though,
started.
Joe Flacco just randomly showed up one postseason and was like, I'm going to put together a top 7 postseason run of all time.
Yeah.
No different than Eli Manning. Eli Manning Super Bowl's rigged too.
Eli,
I don't think it was
Shit,
rigged.
as a Patriots fan, I should say yes.
I'm not going to say
Helmet catch bullshit. Come on.
that was just crazy.
He came down. He came down, though. Like,
Hey,
thing
I
is,
will say that the
All I'm
Patriots got
saying-
extremely unlucky and lost Super Bowls
Eli
on one in a
Manning
million
got-
plays that would never
Put
happen
up a
again.
Eli Manning put up a hell of a postseason.
he did.
Those 2
But-
years.
But you got to realize the conspiracy theory. The conspiracy theory with the Ravens winning the Super Bowl, that's not the conspiracy theory. It's the fact that the Niners came back and almost won, and they should have won. That's the conspiracy theory. It seems like they shut it down to have an emergency meeting back in New York. They have this emergency meeting, and they're like, all right, this is the game plan. 49ers, do this, and you'll win the game. And the 49ers fucked it up. That's what it seemed like happened. And I remember watching the game, and I was like, wow, there's no way the Ravens are going to – as a Steelers fan, I was like, oh, I can't believe the Ravens are going to blow this. But, like, as a sports fan, I was like, there's no way in hell that the Ravens blow this. And luckily, they held on.
Yes.
They deserve to win that Super Bowl, definitely. But
I don't know if it's rigged, but
it is one of those situations where, like, you go back and watch it, and it's like there were a lot of flags. There are a lot of weird situations that happened that game. A lot of really stinky situations, some may say.
I don't know about stinky.
But I think we're ready to talk about the Black Sox scandal. Anybody who doesn't know, obviously the Black Sox scandal is about the Chicago White Sox 1919 World Series against the Cincinnati Reds. So the scandal is all about, Shoeless Joe Jackson and the gang gambling with a syndicate led by Arnold Rothstein as a response to the MLB. And it ended up going to court. They ended up being acquitted because they weren't able to provide enough evidence to, prove it. But all 8 of those players, including Shoeless Joe Jackson, were banned from MLB. And Shoeless Joe Jackson, which was one of the greatest players of all time, you look at, how that situation went down, I don't think there's an if, say, but about it. That game was rigged.
Yeah, because the White Sox wanted it that way. The players wanted it that way.
Yeah. It's a crazy situation because it ended up going to trial. And, we're talking about grand jury. This went to the grand jury. This was such a big deal.
Yeah.
They threw the game in exchange for $100K.
Yep. Which at the time,
Yeah, that's
Let's look it up. 100K in 1919. Probably a few million.
about $2 million.
2 million. Okay, so I was pretty close.
But at the time, $2 million was a lot.
Yeah, I don't. 2 million is still a lot now.
Yeah. I feel like $2 million back then, even $100,000, even though the equation is
1.8 million to be exact.
yeah.
Still a fair amount of money.
You could buy bread
I'll
for a
take-
penny, bro.
I'll take 1.8 million.
That's a lot of bread.
Yeah, that is a lot of bread.
Aha.
So it all started with Gandil at the time, and then he started recruiting everybody else.
Yep. It's crazy. It's a good.
What exactly about this did you want to talk about, though? Because
I just, as I said,
it's just an obvious one. That's all I'm saying.
I wanted to end it on like just a straightaway one that just was kind of a duh. But you can't talk about scandals in sports and not talk about the Black Sox.
Okay, so if we're talking scandals, where do we sit on Pete Rose?
Oh, I have my own.
He's already been
theory
in
on
the
that.
Hall of Fame.
I have my own theory on that, and it comes from the words of the commissioner beforehand and in the trial when he fought it, asked for a retrial, whatever. They said that he will not, like, the specific words that were used. He will not be in the hall while he is alive.
He is alive. While he is alive,
They're gonna do it out of spite, and like within a year of him dying, watch him get honorably elected into the hall. They're gonna do it.
Yep. He was too good. You don't have a player that plays for 23 years, is one of the best players just on hits.
The all-time
Just
hits,
all-time-
is like,
all-time
is
hits.
like the equivalent of like having LeBron James now the all-time scoring leader, being omitted from the hall. That's kind of. I'm not saying that Pete Rose was as great of a player, like compare.
There's an argument to be made. There's an argument to be made that Pete Rose was as impactful to his sport as LeBron is to his sport. Pete Rose,
Yeah.
I mean, for fuck's sake, the Reds would have been nothing in the 60s and 70s without Rose, dude. Nothing!
My man was placing hella bets.
Yeah.
Hey, bro, you love the sport on and off the diamond, you know?
Where he really messed up
Really
was
loved
Bennington back in the early 2000s.
Yep.
He kept it. Like, I've read something about it. He kept a journal that he kept stuff to incriminate himself that he kind of told on himself.
No, he admitted it. He definitely told on himself.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I mean, that's where he kind of screwed himself. He
Well,
definitely.
he didn't probably know. I mean, this probably might be public knowledge, but I haven't really read up on the trial and all that info. But he might have not known what the MLB had against him. He didn't want to catch a perjury charge and lie when they had evidence stating otherwise. But who knows?
I would say the investigation was completed in the 90s. He admitted to it in 2004.
I remember when he admitted to it. Yeah, watching ESPN because he did it like live on ESPN.
Well, what's funny is Pete Rose placed the first legal bet in Ohio.
They should have seen it coming. They should have seen. This fucker was biting at the grit just to fucking go play some bets, bro. He's like, oh, a casino open. He's the first one in line. He's been camping out there for 2.5 weeks. The Reds are calling him up. They're like, hey, spring training started, dude. Where the fuck you at? And he's like, my mom died. Then my dog ran away. My cat's on fire. I'll be in. Don't worry about it. Trust me. The casino doors are open. Rose, you better not be at the fucking casino. We had to drag you out of Vegas last time we were there. I'm not at the casino. Hello, Mr. Rose. Welcome to the first Cincinnati casino. Thank you very much. Rose, get your back. I gotta go, coach. I gotta go. Like, you knew. If you didn't know, you're stupid. Okay?
Yeah.
Oh, Jesus Christ.
Yeah. I agree with that.
Yeah, the Black Sox apparently is the biggest sports scandal in history.
Apparently. Just apparently.
According to this list.
Definitely a good one. Top 3 for sure. But
I don't know. Anyways, I was just looking at the list of the biggest sports scandals in history. That's all.
Where was
Yeah.
the Lakers?
The Black Sox are number one.
Where the Lakers in Sacramento?
That's not on his list.
Wow.
That's a big one.
Well,
This is a big one for you guys. You guys, whatever.
What? Oh, the
The
Lakers.
Tuck rules on there.
I don't think that's even a conspiracy. Just because, like, if you actually knew what the NFL rule book was, that the Tuck rule, like, what the way the rule was written at the time, the ruling on the field was called correctly by the rules of the game at the time. The only problem
But-
was that it was just never called. But the funny thing is, the last time it was called was against the Patriots earlier that season. Before that, they just never really used it. It's decided a great time to, in a huge game to decide to call that call.
Yeah,
Yep.
Lance Armstrong's on the list too.
Rousey home. That's a conspiracy.
Nah.
I don't think so either.
She got too confident
I don't
thinking
know.
that she could strike with elite strikers. When that's not her game. That's all.
I feel that.
I would agree if you said back in the earlier days, like the 20s, 30s, something like that, was sports were rigged. I would agree with something like that more so than nowadays.
Okay.
So, I mean, there's the Hotspur conspiracy as well in 2006. That's a fun one.
That's a fun one. What's that one?
So
Fun.
the Hotspurs finally qualified for the Champions League in 2006. The Tottenham players gathered. They had their pre-match. They were getting ready for their matchup with Marriott. Or not Marriott. They went to their Marriott, excuse me. They were getting ready for their next matchup, went to Marriott, and all the players were poisoned.
Oh, yeah.
All of them were unable to perform the next day. Multiple players had to get blood drained, stomachs pumped, the whole nine.
Shit, why did I forget about deflategate? That's a big
one. I mean, he did
That's a
deflate
pretty
those
big
balls.
That's a big one to me.
So did Lance
Oh
Armstrong.
my god, that's. Oh, okay, Travis.
Was that game rigged, Ben?
Deflategate? No.
Okay.
I don't think a couple pounds. If the game would have been close,
Yeah,
Maybe.
that's the
wasn't.
thing for me.
But they got.
It was not
you-
close.
You got smacked by 40 points, and you're just mad about it. That's
Listen, they scored more points in the second half than the first half. Plus, basic when you go from hot to cold factors into play, right?
And, even if the balls were deflated, a couple PSI ain't going to change the momentum of the game like that. And the thing is, here's an unpopular theory that no one talks about ever with the Deflategate scandal. Tom Brady's been throwing fully inflated balls for, 30 years at that point? 20 years? And you think that just randomly in a playoff game against a team that the Patriots just were better than, that Colts
Up and
team was
down the
good,
field.
but
Easily
just
better.
up and down the roster, just straight up better. You think that's the game that Tom Brady decides to cheat? Not against the 2005 Steelers, who have one of the best defenses of all time, where he loses. Not against the 2011 Jets, which he ends up losing to. Not against the 2015 Jags. Not against those teams. Those aren't the teams that he cheats against that have those dominant elite defenses, all-time great defenses. He just randomly decides to do it against the Colts. That just doesn't add up to me.
Yep.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So
Plus,
I'm on board with that.
I think a lot of I'm not even a New England fan, and I think a lot of the bullcrap scandals that have come out about New England are just were just media blowing it up so much because fan bases were just pissed off because they wanted to hate the Patriots, and it turned into something that it wasn't. A lot of
I mean, plus
Now Spygate.
the whole Wells report.
God,
thing
the
that came
Patriots were
after
doing
that.
something the entire league was doing. They just filmed from a different spot in the room. Oh my God, they're the ones that got caught. Though. Oh my God.
So, okay. You know why that's... So, people underplay it like that, but the thing is, it was a big deal. It is a big deal that they were getting all 22 footage instead of scouting footage. That's the difference.
They were able to hear keywords and stuff. And
Exactly. So, they have...
Hey, you know what? They're just being more efficient with their time.
Hey,
what I
you could
think.
say that. You could say that, but
That's what I hear.
it definitely gave them an unfair advantage that was against the rules. So, in my opinion, that is cheating.
Nah, not cheating. The Patriots were on the up and up at the time.
So Bounty Gate, though, since we're talking about NFL gates, Bounty Gate,
that one was proven, and there was fines handed out.
yeah. How do we feel about that, though?
Personally,
Hey, listen.
I don't think
Bag's the
Sean,
bag.
as great as he is, I don't think Sean Payton should have ever been allowed back in the NFL.
Really?
For something like that, yeah, trying to purposely hurt a player, what his body at that point is his source of income and his ability to make, make a living for himself, and you're purposely trying to destroy that.
Rip their knee out. Because Bounty, thing is, Bounty, I don't know if you guys noticed the extent to Bounty Gate. It sounds like Travis does. But there was different bounties rewarded based on how you knocked them out. So if you tore their ACL and it was a division opponent and it was their quarterback, it was worth like, I want to say $250,000.
Boy, doesn't Ndamukong Suh wish he came into the league like 3 years earlier. He would have made a hell of money.
He would have made a nice chunk of change.
Yeah, so
Very true.
like we're talking about like not just like, for example, a player that
Member of that coaching staff that knew about that and didn't say anything, they should have been blacklisted. I
Me
feel
too.
bad about it.
So wasn't that was players offering bounties?
no, it was
Because Jonathan Vilma apparently, supposedly, offered $10K to any player who knocked Favre out of the NFC Championship game that year.
no. So what? This is how it works. The defensive coordinator got bonus funds from the Saints organization, and it would have a starting pot. And any player who threw into it would boost the pot, and they would match equally. So if Velma threw in 10K, the Saints organization would throw in 10K. If a player threw in 50K, another player would throw in, the organization would throw in 50K. So then they started talking about specific injury types and multipliers and shit. So it's like they have a chalkboard in the locker room. They're drawing plays on one side, and as soon as everybody else walks out of the room, they flip the board over and they say, Favre's kneecap, $100,000. Favre's head, 50K. They're like, go ahead, go take your spins, boys. And by the way, they have a backup right garden.
I would say lucky for Favre, he just happens to be the NFL's Iron Man. So
Not till that game.
I mean, they didn't but he wasn't feeling good after.
Talking about Favre conspiracy theories about it. What about his daughters? I don't want to get a season assist on this. I don't know if you guys heard about that with Pat McAfee and stuff.
Favre going after him, saying he's going to sue Pat McAfee and everything.
For talking about that situation with
it's
him
public
suddenly.
Newspaper and type into Google. What do you mean Pat McAfee's getting in trouble? Talk about everyone.
Yeah.
You can't single him out just because you had to beat him. It sucks because I loved watching Favre. He was one of my favorite players growing up. And then, after he retires, find out that as a great football player, love watching him play, but human being,
Not so
much. Questionable.
Those Wranglers still do look good on him. But on that note,
All right, Shane. You're just looking at the booty. Calm down. All right, Travis, send this out.
All right, thanks for listening, everyone. Remember to like, subscribe, comment, give us some feedback. We love to hear from all of you. Appreciate all your support. Also, if you're in the County tomorrow it's Saturday in Battle Creek. There is a 269 Gloves Up, Guns Down event going on for some local for Bobby Sims, and you guys should be there. It's great. Details are in the Facebook page, and keep remembering to follow TikTok and YouTube, and we're out.
Oh. Like, comment, share.